Okay, great. We're back. So we're up to Mesechtes Chagigah and page 3a. So it's a little hard to see the page here because of the layout. You don't see the layout of the actual Gemara in here, but this makes it somewhat easier also. So we're up to the second statement, the second thing that we're learning off of Rav Tanchem. Last week we learned from Rav Tanchem that he says someone who is deaf with one ear, he's exempt. He doesn't have to go up to be Oile Regel. This time we're talking again from Rav Tanchem, but he's saying someone who's limping on one foot, meaning he has trouble with one foot. Putim and Huriyah is also exempt. He's not obligated to go up for Huriyah. And where does it take that from? Because Shanema Regulum, it says Regulum. Now Regulum has a double meaning. It's a play on the word. Okay? Regulum can mean the legs, the regel. It can also mean a holiday. Shulish Regulum. If I click on Regulum, let me see if I can just jump to the posuk right away. So it's in Shemas. Shulash Regulum Tuchak Libashunu. 3 times a year you should celebrate. You should have this Yom Tov. So Regulum has a double meaning. And since the Torah uses this word, instead of just saying a different word, many different words to say for Yom Tov, so therefore it means that you need to have feet. And if you have one foot that it's not fully functional, then you're exempt. So the Gemara asks, I lost my place. Vahu Regulum, this word says the word Regulum, it's not an extra word. We already learned something from it. We need to learn from it Prat lebalakaben, that it needs to exempt someone who has an amputated leg and he has this fake legs. He has a word or he has something, he has a fake leg. So I want to just explain something here. Whenever we learn something that stands out, something that's a little different, we don't jump, oh, it means everything. We just jump to one level that's closest and we say, okay, it means also that. Okay, for example, here, if you have the word regulum, which is a funny term, it's not the regular term to use for a holiday, then why do you jump to someone who's even just having an issue with one leg? It means someone who doesn't have legs, which is a way more understanding that that's what the pasuk means. It says regulum, it needs to have 2 legs. For someone who doesn't have 2 legs. So the Gemara says, no, we already learned that someone needs to have 2 legs to be able to go in a regel. We learned that from another word. Hahi me pe'omem nafka. So there's a word saying pe'omem. Now again, pe'omem is also a word that could have double translations, double meaning. One meaning, which means pe'omem means how many times. Shulash pe'omem means 3 times. But now the Gemara is playing that the word pe'omem can also mean legs. Where? The Gemara is like pointing out. So where do we see that? The Tanya, because we learned pe'omem, that the word pe'omem, ein pe'omem eli regulum, that the pe'omem means regulum, as we learned before. Regulum means legs, like regel. That's what we learned in the Mishnah. And not only that, v'chani oimer, we also learned in the posuk, now he's quoting a posuk, Tirmusanu rugel ragla uni pa'amai dalam. I can drill in here to see where this posuk is really coming from. But the point what the Gemara is trying to say here is that you see that he's using the terms interchangeably. Rugel, which means a foot, ragla uni, which means the legs of a poor man, pa'amai dalam, which also means the feet, dalam of the poor. So you see that the posuk interchanges between these 2 terms. So you see both of them could be expressed as legs, as the feet. And since the Torah says shulash pe'omem bashunu 3 times a year, I already know that someone needs 2 feet. Now, why did the Torah also use regulim? Because it's a next level. Not only he needs 2 feet, no, both feet have to be fully functional. That's where we go with it. And the Gemara brings even another proof, and this part comes from Shir Hashirim. It says, "V'omer av yufe pa'mayich ban ulam bas nudev." The Gemara is going to elaborate now on this pusik, but first, what does it say? It says how beautiful are pa'mayich, which is again the word pa'omem, those feet, ban ulam, in those you can maybe return as in shoes, bas nudev, the daughter of the noble. So this is the pusik that we learned in Shir Hashirim. I want to see if I translated it right. So I'm just going to drill into this. Quickly open up this in Shir Hashirim. So one of the nice things that I like with this site. I can click on Shir Hashirim and I can now ask here, give me the translation. So how lovely are your feet in sandals. So that's my yufu pamayich ban ulam. O daughter of nobles. Bas nudev, the daughters of nobles. From Master Hand. This is already the next posik. Okay, so yes, I translated it pretty on target. So the Gemara is now going to elaborate on this pusik. What are we talking about? What does it mean? And we know that King Solomon wrote Shir Hashirim. So what is he referring to when he's saying this? So the Gemara says, Dura Shruva, Ruva said, Ma kusif, ma dichsif. What's the explanation? What does it mean? Ma yufa pamayich ban ulam bas nudev. The pusik, exactly the pusik that we just learned. What does it mean? How nice are your feet in the sandals, the daughter of the noble? It goes on to when the Yidden go to do Euler Regel. How nice are the feet of the Yidden, the Jews, the shoes when they walk up, when they use their legs and they stress on and they walk up to the Temple Mount to see Hashem and to be seen. How beautiful is that scene? And that's what this pusik is referring to. And it finishes off with Bas Nudev, the daughter of the noble. So the Gemara asks, what does it mean by that? Daughter of whom? So the Gemara says it means Bita Shel Avram Ovini. The King Solomon is referring to, obviously in a moshel, in a comparable, that he's saying, he's calling to the Yidden as in the daughter of Avram Avini Shenikra Nudev, which he is called with the name Nudev, as in noble. Where? Shenember, because it says in Pusik, Nedivai Amim Nasufi Am Elekai Avram, which means the noble of the nations have gathered with the nation of the God of Avram. This is not the first translation. We're going to change that in a minute. But here we see that Avram is being called the noble. And therefore, when Shlomo HaMelech wrote, King Solomon wrote Bas Nodev, he means the daughters of Avram Avini. And this is the posek. This phrase comes from Psalms in Tehillim. So the Gemara asks, Elekai Avram, only the leader, the God of Avram. What about Isaac and Jacob? Why are the Yidden, why is Shlomo Melech only referring to the Yidden as in the daughters of Avram? So the Gemara says, you know what? We have to twist this a little bit. You know why they're being considered the daughters of Avram? Because Elo Elekai Avram Shahoyu Techila Legaidem. Avram was the first one who made Gaidem, who converted non-Jews to becoming Jews. And therefore, he has gotten the title. So here's a little question. We know that there is no mitzvah in converting non-Jews into becoming Jews. We're not pursuing it. We're not trying to sell them. Not because we have something that we don't want to share. We do it because there's no need for them to convert. They can reach whatever they need to reach as not being a Jew. If they weren't created a Jew, there's no need for them to convert into being a Jew. So why is the Gemara telling us here that Avram Avini was the first one and therefore he's noble? What is the nobility in that? So it bothered me this, so I clicked on it and I jumped into Rashi. Rashi is the commentator on the Gemara and right away explains what does it mean. So Rashi says here, the Divai Amim, why does he call Nudiv? Not because it's noble. Rashi says because he donated, like someone giving a nedava. It means a donation. So Avram is being called Nedivai, not because of a noble thing he did, because he donated his heart to recognize the Creator. And the same thing is the Pusik where we quoted before, Nedivai Amim Nasufi. It means the guiding that they donated their lives and when they accepted upon themselves the yoke of doing mitzvahs. That's a donation that they give. So that's a total different term here. So Nedivai doesn't mean anymore the daughters of the noble. It means of the daughters of those who donate as a nedava. So now it makes sense here that this is why they're being called the daughters of Avram, because he was the first one to give this donation. Okay. So now the Gemara is going to jump into another thing here, which is a very off topic. And the reason why we're getting to this here is because it's another saying being said in the name of Reb Tanchem. So we just had two things about Reb Tanchem. Now we're having another one saying in the name of Reb Tanchem, even though it's totally out of topic, but the Gemara would bring it in here as in the continuation of Reb Tanchem. So Rav Kahana said, Durish Reb Nusen bar min Yoimai, Mishim Reb Tanchem. Reb Nusen, the son from Min Yoimai, which is the name of his father, he was giving a speech and he said something in the name of Reb Tanchem. So what did he say? He took a posuk where it says that the brothers of Yosef threw him into a pit. And the Torah expresses about the pit, what it was. So why does it mean when it says Vabar Reich Ein Bo Mayim? The hole, the pit was empty. Reich means empty. And then the Pusik also says Ein Bo Mayim, there was no water in there. So he asks, since the Torah tells us the pit was empty, I already know there is no water in there. If there would have been water in there, it wouldn't have been empty. So why do you have to tell me that it's empty and there was no water in there? Why does the Torah repeat itself? So it says, Elu, the Torah is teaching us, yes, it's empty, but not completely empty. It's something in reverse here. What does it mean? It means Mayim Ein Boy. There are no water there. There are snakes, there are scorpions, right? Am I now pronouncing this right? That they were there. So it wasn't empty completely. It was empty, but water was not there. Something else was there. So therefore, it's another saying of Reb Tanchem as in how he read that posuk, that the Torah is hinting here on something more. And the same as Reb Tanchem said before, that we know from the word regulim that the Torah is hinting us for someone needs to have two strong legs to be able to be oile rego. Okay, so that's a pause. That's up to here. Any questions? We're good. Okay, so here we're going to start a story, and it's going to go up for way into the second side on the third page. And I don't know how far I'll get to, but I'll try to do all of it. We'll see how far we get to. So Tuni Rabbunim, the Rabbunim learned Maaseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroike. There was a story once from Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Beroike, together with his friend Rabbi Eliezer ben Chesma. These two were Talmidim. They were students from Rabbi Yeshia. Shaholchi lehagbel pnai Rabbi Yeshia b'kian. So they went to see the face, to greet their Rabbi Yeshia b'kian. Now, why does this come in here? Where do we start with such a story? I think it's because, as we have learned, some people are exempt from having to go up to the Beis Hamikdash. And therefore, they sit alone. or maybe it was in the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, and there was nowhere to go. Like nowadays, when we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, it's a time in Yom Tov to go and see your Rebbe. That's one of the things that we do nowadays. That we cannot go al regel, but at least we go up to visit our rabbi, to see him, to get some advice, to just to greet him on Yom Tov, as a sign as that we want to greet Hashem, as we going to be al regel. So here the Gemara is telling us a story that these two went to see their Rebbe, Pekian. He lived in the city of Pekian. So the Rebbe asked him, so the Rebbe himself couldn't go to shul. He was old, he wasn't well. So he asked his Talmidim, what was the story? What was something new that we learned today in this Medrash? But these two didn't want to answer. So they told him, Talmidecha oni, we are your students. And they used their parable. We came to drink your water. We didn't came to offer you our water. We're your students. Now, of course, Torah is compared to water many times. So they're saying it that we came to learn from you. We didn't came to teach you. We're your students. And the Gemara is going to explain later why they did that. So he told them, Alpha Pecan, although, yes, you're my students, but this is a very famous quote, that there's no such thing as learning without something new now. Because every time you learn something, even though you've learned it so many times, every time you repeat it, something new comes up. So he told them, yes, you're my students, but I want to hear what was in this Medrash, because there must have been something new, even though they learned something I may know already. So they didn't answer. So he started squeezing it out of them. He asked, Shabbos shel mi haisu. Whose Shabbos was it? That's the little translation. But let me explain what this means. Shabbos means the week. The story it goes back to a story from, I think it's in Bruchas, where Reb Luzer ben Azariah and Rebbe Gamliel were shifting. Who was the Nusi? 1 week was Reb Luzer ben Azariah, 1 week was Rebbe Gamliel. It's a whole story. I don't know if I'll repeat it correctly. But the story goes that Gamliel didn't treat Rabbi Yehuda very respectfully, and they protested on him. They impeached him, if I can use the term, and then they had to set someone up. So they set up Rebbe Luzer ben Azariah, to be the new Nusi. Then Rebbe Gamliel apologized. He realized what he did. So they couldn't take Rebbe Luzer away, so they made every week someone else to be giving the speech, to be the Nusi. So here that he wanted to start conversation, he wants to get what happened in Shul, he starts off by asking, whose week was it? Who was giving the shir? Shabbos shel mi haisu. So the answer, Shabbos shel Rebbe Luzer ben Azariah. So it was the Shabbos that Rebbe Luzer ben Azariah. And what was the topic? What did you speak? Amri loy, they answered him, B'Parshas Hakel. We were talking about the mitzvah of Hakel. Now here's another reason why this story is relevant to our Gemara. I said before, because they went to see their rabbi, which is something we do in the time of Al Regel. But here, because they were learning, doesn't have to mean, which means the story didn't have to happen at the time of Yom Tov. It could have happened any day, but they were learning this topic of the Yidden having to go up to the temple, to the Beis Hamikdash, to learn. So what did you learn? So they answered, Hakal esuam anushim venushim v'taf. The Torah tells us that we have to gather up everyone, men, women, and the kids. And Rebbe Luzer said, Im anushim bu'un. You know why the men come? Lilmut, because they have to learn. Nushim bu'ors, the shmoya. The women come because they can still listen, even though they have no mitzvah of learning, but they have a mitzvah of listening, so they know what to do. Half lamed boom, but the kids, why would they come? They're not listening. They have no mitzvah learning. If anything, they cause trouble, right? So why would they come? So the Gemara answers, it's not because of them. To give schar to those who bring them, to their parents, the father, the mother, whoever brings them is teaching them, is being mechanach their kids. That gives them schar, and therefore the Torah says, bring them. And this is something we learn up to nowadays. Many people say, bring your kids to shul, even though they're not davening, even though they're maybe bothering you, obviously not too much bothering, then bring them so that you train them. And that gives you schar, even though it makes it harder on you to bring them along. So this is what he said. This is what these two students answered to their Rebbe Yoshia. Umalohem, so Rabbi Yoshia answered back to them, Marguli is toiva hoisu beyadchem, ivikashtem la'abdom imeni? You guys had such a beautiful stone, and you wanted to keep it away from me? Meaning, again, he's talking in a parable. You had such a nice thing here that he taught you, and why wouldn't you teach it to me? Why wouldn't you share it with me? That's basically what he shared with them. And then they continued. Since they started talking already, they shared what else they learned. And we also learned that it says in the Pusik, as Hashem himartam hayoim, Hashem hamirchu hayoim. It's basically seeing that repeated. Let me see if I can drill into this Pusik and find exactly where it is. So these are two phrases in Deuteronomy, which is the 5th, chapter 26, 17th and the 18th phrase. The first one starts up as Hashem ha'amartu hayoim. Hashem is telling you today, to be your God, and you should be going in His ways, and you should guard His commandments, and His mitzvahs, and mishputav and His laws, and listen to His voice. And then the next phrase is says Hashem ha'amirchu hayoim, which is He deviated, and He's saying the same message. You should be His nation. He's talking to you, and you should guard His mitzvahs. So what's the change here? What has happened here? So he's saying, Hashem is having a conversation here with the Yidden that's hinted in this pusik. You have done something for me in this world. That's that one thing that's big. And I'm going to make you one thing that's very big in the world. So what is it? How did we make Hashem one in the world? Because we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokani Hashem Echad. The phrase that we say that Hashem is one, and we pronounce it and we proclaim it 3 times a day, actually twice a day, and then at Kriyas Shema Mitzvahs, and we say third times a day, the third time. So by doing that, we're making Hashem one in the world, which is a Hashem is sharing it as a compliment, and there's something I'm doing in return for that. And I'm also doing something for you in the world. As it says in the Pusik, and now we're going to go over to the second side, page B, page B of sheet Gimel. So third page, second side. Hashem says, who is like my nation, that one nation in the earth, on planet Earth. So therefore, when Hashem says there's 2 different deviations, Hashem hamirchu hayoim, amartu and hamirchu, He's telling you and we're telling Him. It's like an expression of a conversation back and forth, that we're making Hashem one and He's making us one. And this is what they learned. That's the second thing they shared, what was learned that day in shul. Now we're moving over to a third thing they learned. Do you have time to continue? We're good, right? Okay, because this is a little longer piece. Okay. And he also said another thing. The sages say that the words of the sages is compared kedabranos, and I'm not going to translate it because we're going to learn later what it means. Kemashmeros netiyem, bala aisifois nit nimeroye echad. This is what they are compared to, and the Gemara is going to now explain what these words mean. It's not just the Gemara; they're explaining this as a part of what was learned in shul that day, what Rabbi Luza ben Azariah said. So he starts off, Lamu nimsheli divra Torah Dabron. Dabron is a piece of wood that they would use to guide the animal in the field. The way they would plow the fields, they would take an ox, they would tie to him a metal with a hook on it in the back, and then they would have a stick, and the ox would follow that stick, and wherever they would move that stick, that's where the ox would move, and that's how they plowed. The earth would get plowed up from the hook. So that's what Kedobron is. So Divdei Chacham, meaning the words of Torah, is compared to that piece of wood. So he's asking, why is the Torah compared to that? Loimelach, to tell you, Ma Dabron ze mechaven esapuru lislumeu, just like that piece of wood is guiding the cow on his way, lahoitzi chaim la'olam, so that it could produce life to the world. It brings life to the world. Why? Because by plowing the earth, you can then put seeds, and that brings life, brings food for the world. The Torah is the same way. It guides the people who learn it from going on a way in life that's death, the dark echaim, to a way of life, that's living. So that's why the Torah is compared to that piece of wood who guides the animal to bring life to the world. Okay, and then he moves on to the next part. But then you may think, but you know what? That little stick is a little thing. It gets very easily lost. After the Torah metalton, you may think that the Torah is compared to that stick all the way, meaning Torah also doesn't have a long-lasting effect. So it can also get easily lost. Talmud Loimer, therefore, it tells you mashmeros, which is the next thing. It's compared to Dabronos and to mashmeros. Now, what's mashmeros? I don't know myself. I'm going to quickly cheat here. So I'm going to jump in to get some source with translation. Lost my place. One thing I don't like about this is that when we open up, I went too far back. Sorry for this pause. We learned this. This is the story. Okay. Mashmeros. What's mashmeros? Following just as good as movable, and it's not rigid. So too matters of Torah are movable and in accordance with circumstances and are not permanent. Therefore, the state is nails, which is permanent. So that's mashmeros. Mashmeros is nails. The Torah is compared to nails, which are permanent. Okay, so just going to make this a little easier to read. Yeah, right here. So now mashmeros also has a shortcome. Which means when you put a nail into a piece of wood and you take the nail out, there's a hole left there. So the nail causes damage. Yes, it's strong, it's solid, it lasts, but it causes damage. Divrei Torah, meaning when you learn, maybe it also makes you shorter, makes a hole in you, punctures something, and it makes you miss out because now you have a hole. So therefore, we're comparing Divrei Torah to the next thing, Netiyim. Netiyim, which means things that grow. Talmud Loimer Netiyim. Just like Netiyim. Mu Netiyo Zipuru Erivu. Netiyim keeps on planting more trees, gives you seeds, and it keeps on growing. The same is with Torah. Torah doesn't make you feel less, doesn't just leave you with a hole. On the contrary, it makes you bigger, it spreads out, and it gives you more. Also gets more. Then in the end, what does it mean? So he says, Bala Asifas means groups of people. Asifa would mean where you gather up people together, you have a conversation, you have a meeting. So they're all having meetings. What does it mean? It means it It means these are the students of their learning, which they sit in groups and they're learning in Torah, and they go back and forth. Haluli mitamam, they say no, it's toma. Haluli mitaran, and they say no, it's tor. They're arguing. Haluli asran, they say it's forbidden. Haluli matirun, and they say no, it's mitter, it's permissible. Haluli paslim, they say it's not good, it's puzzle. Haluli machshidim, and the others say no, it's good. These are the Bala Asifis. So what about them? He finishes off saying, Bala Asifis nitni meroya echat. It's all given from one shepherd. Shepherd, Roy means a shepherd, one shepherd. What does that mean? It means that maybe a person would come and look at all of this and say, why do I need this headache? Why am I I see, Torah is very powerful. It gives life to the world, and it doesn't it's like a nail, it's solid, and it grows, brings me more and more, but it's still so much trouble. I have to argue with people. He says yes, and I say no, and I say it's tum, and he says tours. So somebody would say, how can I learn Torah from this? Talmud Loimer, he says, you know what? We all have one goal. It's all given from one master. Hashem has given us all, and even though we argue, we're not fighting. We're arguing because we all want to get to the truth. We're trying to challenge each other to get to the truth, to get to what that one master has told us. The same thing is here. One God gave it to us. And only one parnas, which means Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the one who gave it to us. And he said it, he said it to us in the name of Hashem, that he created all of the world. As it says in the Pusik, that God has spoken all these. So here I want to take a little pause here. What have we just learned? You know what? I'm not going to stop because I see the Gemara itself is explaining it. Okay, I forgot. So the Gemara says here, so all of this, so much argument, and it's all given by one person. What does that mean? Where do I go with that? So the Gemara says, Af atu, the same is with you. Asai oznechu kafarkeses. Make your ear like a funnel. Listen in. Iknai lechu live maivin, and get yourself a heart that you're trying to understand what's underneath it. What's underneath of this argument? Why is this saying? To listen to those who say it's Tama, as divrei metarim, and those who say who are Torah, as divrei asrim, those who say it's forbidden, as divrei metirim, those who say it's permissible, as divrei poslim, for those who say it's no good, it's puzzle, as divrei machshirim, and those who say it is good, it's good. Belushan hazeh umelohem, and with this solution, now we're coming back to Rabbi Yeshia, that he listened to all these three things that Eluzah ben Azariah taught them in Besmedrash. So Rabbi Yeshia is telling them, Ein dor yusam shel Eluzah ben Azariah shuriboy. The generation is not orphaned at the time when we have Eluzah ben Azariah living within them, meaning that he's saying such beautiful things that we're not orphaned. Now I want to come back first here and say, what have we just learned here? And this is a very, very powerful message. Rabbi Eluzah ben Azariah is basically telling us, and I've taken it from here when I said in the beginning, why doesn't the Torah, doesn't the Gemara right away tell us what's the halacha? You have to go on a regel, and these people are exempt, and this is how much it costs. Why does the Gemara teach us all the arguments until they finally get to the halacha? Why does the Gemara make us go through all that? And the answer to that is because the Gemara is not here to just give me, this is the halacha, and how would I do in a time when it's not exactly written? What would I do there? No. The Gemara is here to help me develop a mind of Torah, to help me develop my mind to think like Hashem. And by thinking like Hashem, I cannot figure out what Hashem would want me to do in any situation in life, even though it's not written exactly in the Torah. And this is what Eluzah ben Azariah is telling us here. You yourself have to become a thinker. You have to listen in and understand why he's saying that way. And use your mind and ask your questions. There's no problem with questions. On the contrary, you need to understand it and you need to own it. It needs to be yours. And that's why the Torah is written in a way that you argue back and forth, and it's all spelled out in the Gemara so that we should live it through, so that we develop our minds and we develop the mind of Hashem to learn and to figure out how to read the Torah and what to do with it. And what would the Torah want me to do in any given situation? That's basically the message that we learn here for what Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah shared. So now we're coming over to a very harsh ending to the story. So the Gemara asks, in the beginning of the story, the Rabbi Yeshia was Rabbi Yehuda, right? I keep on mixing up the names, so I'm jumping up. Rabbi Yeshia Bekian, right? So in the beginning, Rabbi Yeshia asked them what was learned, and they didn't want to answer. He had to squeeze it out of them. Why? Remember, why didn't they say it right away when he asked them? They had such beautiful things to share. Why didn't they? So the Gemara answers, there once was a story. The Tanya, we learned, Masib Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus. This was Rabbi Yossi, the son of Damascus, not Rabbi Yeshia. Granted, it's a different Rebbe, different student. Shehulech l'hagbel as Panai Rebbe. And this Rabbi Eliezer Belid, he went to see his Rebbe. Umerloi, and the Rebbe asked him, what was the new thing? What was something fresh learned today in the shul? And he didn't hesitate. He right away said, Umerloi, he answered to his Rebbe, Nimni v'gamri. We have stated up, the way it worked is that it took a vote. They would come up with an argument, people would pose their sides, and then they would vote, and that's how they would constitute what the halacha is to be based on the most people. So they said, Aman imoyev ma'asrin masr uni b'shviyas. So what is this? It means that we know when it comes to giving maser, again, something so outside of our topic, but that's what the Gemara is. It jumps from everywhere, back and forth. So let me introduce what this is. When it comes to giving maser, here in Israel, we practically still do it nowadays. Baruch Hashem. We took the fruit that comes off of the tree every year. There's a system. What goes to the Kohen, what goes to the Levi, and you're not allowed to use it until you give that. But then there's a third one, a third maser, that the first and second year it goes to the Levi. The third year it goes to the poor. Again, fourth and fifth year, it goes to the Levi. The sixth year, it goes to the poor. The seventh year, it doesn't go to anyone because it's Shemitah. So every seventh year is Shemitah. And then they start again. First year, to the Levi. That's the third Maser. But what happens on Ammon and Moav? Ammon and Moav were the two territories outside of the Jordan River. So they didn't have Shemitah. So what? They still need to give Maser. So what would they do on the seventh year when nobody gives any maser? Do they give to the Levi or do they give to the poor? So that was the argument in shul, in the synagogue in the shul that day. They were arguing what should the people in Ammon and Moav do in a year that it's Shemitah in Israel. What should they give? And they counted up and they said they should give maser uni. And the reason they should give maser uni is because there's a lot of poor people. If it's Shemitah and nobody is plowing and nobody is working their fields, there's a lot more poor people. So therefore, they should give Maser only supporting the people in Israel, which is something we still do nowadays. People in America support even in Israel. Just a little hint here. So Umalai, so the Rebbe was upset with this, was upset with his student that he didn't know about this. Umalai Yossi, so he told his student, Yossi, Shoit Yudechu, open up your hands, V'kabel Einechu, and accept your eyes. So literal translation basically means, Shoit Yudaf, he put out his hand, the Kibul Einav, and his eyes fell out from his face. Now, we'll come back to this in a minute, but this is a very harsh story. Bucher Reb Eliezer, And Reb Lozer cried on this. Who's this Reb Lozer? The Rebbe. Reb Lozer, and he cried and he said, and he said, Soid Hashem lirayov, the secrets of Hashem, he quoted this pusik, secrets of Hashem are to his close ones. Ibrisa le'adiyam. This is something he said. I don't know what exactly it means. Let me see if I can drill into Russia. So Rasha says the reason why he was upset, he said because it was hard on his eyes that he gave the credit to them that they themselves have counted in and they voted and they stated the halacha to be so, when really this halacha goes back to the times of the Anshe Knesset Agdola. They already instituted that the people in Ammon and Moav should be giving Maser only on the Shemitah year. So that's why he was upset. But it doesn't really say the translation of this pasuk why he said that. Omerloi, but then the Rebbe told for this Rabbi Yossi, like Amoiloham, go tell to the people in the shul, Al technishu lemanachem. You shouldn't, there's two ways of saying this. Don't question your counting, your vote, or don't take the credit for your vote. I have already accepted this from my Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan Mazakai, that he has heard it from his Rebbe, and his Rebbe has heard it from his Rebbe. That we have already learned this from Moshe Messina, that Moshe Rabbeinu has taught us that Aman Ma'aser Maser Uni B'Shvius, that Maser Uni, that the Yidden living in Ammon and Moav should be giving Maser only for the poor in the Shemitah. My time, why? Because Harbe Karachem Kafshi Oile Mitzrayim V'loi Kevushim Oile Bovo. Many cities were conquered when they came up from Mitzrayim, but when they came back from Bovel, they weren't. When the Yidden came back from the first was Egypt. Second exile was in Bovel, the Babylon. So when the Yidden came back from Bovel, they did not conquer all the land as the Yidden that came up from Egypt, from Mitzrayim. Why? The first time when the Yidden made Israel holy, it was only for the time being. It wasn't forever. But the second time when the Yidden came up and they made Israel holy, it's forever. So why didn't they do that the first time? Why, when they came up the second time, they didn't conquer everything just like the first time? So the Gemara answers, they left it that way. They didn't conquer everything, so that the poor people on the Shemitah, on the sabbatical year, they should have somewhere to lean on, someone to give them support to live on. So the Gemara now finishes off the story. Tuna, we have learned after when Reb Lozer calmed down, Umar, he said, Yehirutzen, may it be your will, basically praying to Hashem, that the eyes of Yosef to go back to his place, the Chazri, and they went back, and he was able to see again. This is where I'm going to finish today. I think we went a little over time. But this is where this story ends. And this is why the two students didn't want to say to their Rebbe, because they didn't want to go through this horror of maybe losing their eyes. So here's many questions. Many questions here, like Rebbe Lozer, you're so upset, and therefore you do something like that, you make him blind to lose his eyes. I mean, it's hard on the ear to listen to this, to understand what's going on here. So to soften this a little bit, I've seen many explanations to this. One of the explanations I heard is that Rebbe Lozer felt that Rebbe Yossi, his student, is Chayav Misa. Chayav Misa means that he's to be killed. Why? Because we know the halacha that if somebody says halacha in front of his Rebbe, and especially if it's his Rebbe's halacha and he didn't say it in his name, it's very disrespectful to his Rebbe. And someone who is blind, someone who is blind, he is considered as dead. Asima Chushav Kemes, someone who's blind is considered as dead. So Reb Luzer had mercy on his Talmud, so he made him blind instead of saying he should be killed, because he knew that what he did now constituted to be killed. Now, of course, not to be killed by humans, to be killed by Hashem, because you've done something that's so disrespectful for Hashem. That's one answer to this. Another answer to this is we're not talking about people that are so weak like us. We're talking about Reb Yossi, we're talking about Reb Luzer, which when he was able to just say, he would just say this little phrase and everything would be back to normal, then he didn't cause that much harm. Now, of course, it's a horrible thing in our minds, but that's only because for us, if we, God forbid, do this, it's a permanent life damage. It's not something we have the power to reverse it. So imagine if I hit someone, in a sense, I can't take it back. I've hit him. He's been pained. But if Reb Luzer was able to do something and then reverse it and put it back to the way it was, then what did he really do? So we're not talking here in terms of what we imagine it is. It's something so different, in a different playing field. So it's hard to say, how could he have done this? Or why? Or how did you lose your temper that much? It's different. So, any questions? So this is where I want to finish for today.
There was a lot here today. Very
Yes.
interesting. Definitely a different level, but